Okay, holy crap, that was a pain in the ass. Everybody, welcome to the show. Round the Nation, TYT Nation, we're back. I've been trying to get on there for the last 20 minutes, so now it is finally functional. Yay. So, sorry. Updates and stuff. They're a bitch. Not Windows updates. These were updates to my streaming software that for some reason made it added some new things that I had to go and check and uncheck and all that stuff. So it's man, I'm just glad I got it working. So anyway, we're back. Like I said, we got a lot of stories to go through. And we've got YouTube shooter. I'm going to talk about that. We have Tennessee Republicans and neo-Nazis. We got Oklahoma teachers strike. We've got the Republicans in California have a new interesting idea on homelessness, and by interesting I mean terrible. And then we'll see if we can get to some of the rest of the stories. But man, we're not gonna have a lot of time, so we're gonna have to try and get through this as much as we can. And again, I do apologize for the tech issues getting into the show. Obviously, we're gonna have those every once in a while. And glad you guys have stuck with it. All right. If you haven't already, please give us a like and a share. Helps us get out as well, now that we are actually live. All right. So let's get into a controversial story. Let's get into the YouTube shooting. Okay. So yesterday there was a shooting at YouTube headquarters in San Bruno, California. Obviously, it's an incredibly terrible disaster. Three people were shot and injured. One person was killed. Obviously, it was a shooter. Took her own life after the shooting, and it's tragic. That again, we have another shooting in America. Now, police have identified the shooter as Nassim Najafi Agdam of San Diego. Oh my God! Look at this. Now we got a Muslim shooter. No, that is absolutely incorrect. First of all, it wouldn't matter if she was a Muslim. But of course, right wingers would be like, "Oh my God, it's the violent Muslims! Violent Muslims! They're shooting up people in California." No, that's not what happened. Not a Muslim. Her faith doesn't matter at all. And look, there's some interesting things that we have learned about her, actually. But first, I do want to go to Reuters. They said that one man is in critical condition and two women were seriously wounded in the attack. Now, YouTube in the YouTube headquarters employs about 2,000 people. And now police have said that Agdam basically attacked people at random. So one of the narratives that's going around is, oh, this was a domestic dispute. This was a spurned boyfriend or whatever. No, that's not true. So no, it's random, but not completely random, as I'm about to get into. Now, according to BuzzFeed, Agdam's father, Ismail, told the Mercury News that he informed his authorities that his daughter might be doing something or might plan to do something bad to the company. Now, so he called the authorities. He's like, hey, man, my daughter's been missing for a couple of days. She's got a big, giant beef with YouTube, and I'm afraid that she might do something, that she might harm herself or she might harm others, which unfortunately happened to be the case. Now, San Bruno police did make contact with Agdam prior to the shooting, as she, like I said, has been reported missing for 2 days. They found her sleeping in her car. Now, they questioned her, and they decided, well, look, nothing we can do. We're just going to let her go. And now, of course, there's going to be a lot of people that are like on the right saying, "Oh my God, the police, they're not doing their job. They're not doing their job." The California police, look at that. They're not able to do their job. Well, hold on here. What are the cops supposed to do? Are they supposed to go and take your guns? Well, the NRA wouldn't be in favor of that. In fact, there are several examples of where the NRA is like, "Hey, no, you will not take this person's guns. You will not take anybody's guns. In fact, we should give more guns to everybody." So that's ridiculous and disastrous. And number two, you just can't arrest people for or take their property without due process. I mean, I guess maybe they could be like, "Oh, you were sleeping in your car," but really, seriously, no. Okay. Anyway, so I guess there's that narrative's going to go around, and there's a lot of narratives going around. But let me tell you about what's actually what I believe actually happened. What actually might have motivated her. Apparently, she had posted a lot of videos about YouTube on YouTube. Now, originally she was a vegan or a vegan and animal rights activist. Nothing wrong with that. Okay, hey, you're vegan. That doesn't make you more prone to violence, obviously. Being an animal rights activist, that doesn't make you prone to violence. So, again, those things really should have nothing to do with this at all. Now, of course, those are primarily linked towards more left-wing activism. So, of course, you're going to have people on the right likely tying that in and saying, "Oh, see, look at that. Registered Democrat, leftist, dangerous Muslim." Again, none of those things are true. So I just want to point that out because, again, there's a lot of misinformation going around, and that happens so soon after a shooting. But again, there are people that will take advantage and try to politicize. No, her main issue actually is an issue against YouTube. Apparently, she claimed that YouTube was discriminating against her. In fact, if you go to her website and all that stuff's been taken down, but she basically said that YouTube had filtered my channels to keep them from getting views. She claimed that and showed pictures of her getting about 10 cents in revenue after 300,000 video views. She says, quote, "There is no equal growth opportunity on YouTube." Well, I mean, look, there's no equal opportunity growth in pretty much America because we have the oligarchs that are running these things. Yeah. And look, as far as YouTube goes, yeah, welcome to post-apocalypse. We've all experienced drops in ad revenue and views. That sucks, but there's nothing here that could ever justify going on a shooting rampage and hurting people. Look, even if you have legitimate issues with certain platforms and things, and I'm not saying that hers are legitimate, but what I'm saying is, as soon as you use violence, you lose any sort of high ground that you might have. Okay, so whatever you do, no, don't blame YouTube, don't blame the policies, don't blame the victims. The 100% of the blame falls on the shooter in this case. In every case, 100% of the blame falls on the shooter for taking that action. Now, BuzzFeed also continued on another YouTube channel that appeared to belong to Ogden, where she mostly posted about animal rights and veganism. Again, there's nothing wrong with that at all. A large banner declared the channel had been filtered and demonetized. Now, again, I think that is her main motivation, and there's a lot of people on the right now that are saying, "Oh, censorship kills." Again, it's not censorship. The content was still on YouTube before the shooting happened. And look, even our content that gets demonetized, and it has. I've had content that has gotten demonetized, and yes, filtered and not shown up on search and discovery and things like that. There's been a lot of changes at YouTube that I've been very unhappy with because it has impacted our channel. But look, nonetheless, you don't do stuff like this. You don't do violence, in apparent retaliation, and it's not censorship. Okay, that stuff is mainly for advertisers. The algorithm change, as I said, adpocalypse and things, that's in response to advertisers. And YouTube is a gigantic corporation. They respond to more conservative and not in the political sense, obviously, advertisers. Yeah, that's how they make money. That's business. Again, it sucks, but that is kind of the way that it operates. And more people should know how YouTube operates. And they operate on algorithms and things like that. Nothing in there justifies at all violence. So, again, no justification whatsoever. Even though filtering and demonetization is real, it's not a good excuse for violence, and it's not censorship. It is not against your First Amendment rights. So, unfortunately, we're dealing with a private company. I am a partner to YouTube, so it is my job to know how this actually works in order to basically run business, right? And I hate the business side of doing YouTube. I just love talking to people, and I love covering issues, and I love talking about things that are important. I hate the business side, right? But if you do this, of course, for a living, then you're going to have to talk about the business stuff. So I think that's important to talk about, and we have been impacted by this. Again, nonetheless, what she did, absolutely, completely, 100%, 150%, 1,000% wrong. She's not a hero to YouTubers. She's not standing up against censorship. She's not standing up for free speech. As soon as you employ violence, you have lost the moral high ground at all. Even if she, and that's assuming she even had any to begin with. And I didn't necessarily agree with that. Okay. So, look, that's apparently what her issue was. It's, again, wrong. And she should not be held up as a model by other YouTubers, because this is not something that we as a community need to tolerate. Okay. All right. So, let's go to the next story here. Hopefully I was clear. Oh. Tennessee lawmakers are refusing to denounce neo-Nazis. Yes, for the second time in recent weeks, a resolution denouncing neo-Nazis and white nationalist groups has died in the Tennessee General Assembly. What the hell is going on in Tennessee? Apparently, they seem to have an issue with trying to call out and denounce neo-Nazi and white supremacist groups. This should be the easiest thing in the world. But somehow, they just can't seem to bring themselves to do it. It's really strange. Now, the first resolution, according to the Tennessean, filed by Representative John Ray Clemens, a Democrat of Nashville, was killed in the House subcommittee in mid-March after Clemens failed to receive a second motion to discuss the resolution. Clemens had filed it days after the deadly August 12th White Nationalists Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia. So, look, I remember talking about the rally in Charlottesville that led to the death of course, Heather Heyer, absolute hero out there protesting against white supremacy and neo-Nazism, and she was murdered. She was run down by a car driven by one of these neo-Nazis. So why would you not denounce neo-Nazi groups when it's been shown that they are violent? Now, unfortunately, like I said, the lawmakers in Tennessee, the Republicans mostly, did not agree. In fact, now what's interesting here actually is that there was a similar measure put forward by Republicans with one notable exception. Last week, House Republican Caucus Chairman Representative Ryan Williams sponsored a nearly identical version of Clemens' resolution that omitted a paragraph urging law enforcement to recognize and pursue white nationalist groups as, quote, domestic terrorist organizations. So that's the issue here. Gee, I wonder why Republicans run in favor of that. I can't quite tell. Oh, no. You cannot call white nationalist groups domestic terrorists. But they engage in, some of them engage in domestic terrorism. Some of them go after people with different political ideologies. And some of them go after people simply because they're African Americans or minorities. So look, maybe that doesn't fit into domestic terrorism, I guess, but I see it as, look, if you have a political motive to harm people and an ideology, and I would say that ideology of white supremacy is an ideology, and you attack somebody for being against that ideology, I believe that makes you a terrorist. But that's me. And so to go back to the situation with Heather Heyer, I believe the person that killed her is a domestic terrorist. And look, white nationalism is just as dangerous as other terror groups that are foreign terror groups. For example, Newsweek reported back in 2017 that white nationalist groups are at least as big as a threat as ISIS. And this is according to the FBI at the time. So let me give you some more information here, some more context. Government data obtained by The Hill notes that some independent data suggests that the number of white supremacist attacks versus Islamic attacks could be as high as 2 to 1, including both plots and attacks carried out. Now, that would mean that white supremacist violence is actually the biggest threat to Americans. So, look, whether or not you call it terrorism, it is no doubt that this is absolutely a threat. Now, last year, in its May Joint Intelligence Bulletin, the Bureau warned white supremacist groups were likely to commit more violent attacks. In fact, it said, quote, the white supremacist movement likely will continue to pose a threat of lethal violence over the next year. So, despite the fact that these groups are on the rise, and these groups are actually doing violent action, here you have Tennessee lawmakers refusing to condemn them because, oh no, white people can't be terrorists. The only terrorists are black and brown. And we have no problem going after them. And I've got more examples of that. Kentucky, back in 2011, was one of the first states to pass anti-Sharia law bills. So they fed into the fear of creeping Sharia. And they had to jump all over that and denounce Sharia law and all that stuff, but they can't denounce white supremacy. Pure hypocrisy. Okay. It's amazing. Okay. Let's move on. So for the past couple of days, thousands of Oklahoma teachers have been marching at the state capitol, doing their walkout in order to try to fight for higher wages, not only higher wages, but more investment into the classroom. Now, these strikes, these walkouts, ended up shutting down schools all over the state. And what they've been asking for, as I said before, is more funding for schools and better pay, which right now are falling apart. I mean, look, you have students with textbooks that are all but destroyed. You have gigantic class sizes and teachers themselves that have been having to get by with 2 or 3 jobs. And some have even had to resort to donating plasma in order to make the rent. So that's disastrous. Look, teacher salary in Oklahoma is 49th in the country. It's really, really bad. And so, look, they looked at what West Virginia was doing, and they're like, you know what? West Virginia, they got what they needed for their education. Now it's time that we do it. Because Oklahoma has had enormous budget cuts. For example, over the last decade, over $100 million had been cut from education alone. And of course, both students and teachers, because there were students also at the Capitol yesterday, they want that restored, and they also want more. They basically want to double that. According to CBS News, however, look, they actually got some concessions from Republican Governor Mary Fallin. According to CBS, on Tuesday, the governor had signed a bill giving teacher support staff like teachers, aides, janitors a $1,250 raise. Last week, she signed a measure that gave teachers a $6,000 pay raise, but only added in about an additional $50 million in school funding. Now, teachers, as I said, were asking for much more in school funding. They wanted a tune of $200 million. So that basically eliminates the $100 million worth of cuts and then adds $100 million more so they can actually properly fund schools. And so now that they're demanding more, Governor Fallin and other legislators are getting rather annoyed. Fallin said, quote, "Teachers want more, but it's kind of like having a teenage kid that wants a better car." So, wait, you're comparing school funding to having a better car. Your car's good enough. You just want everything. You just want more and more. That's ridiculous. No, we're not going to give you more. You take your clunker and be happy with it. Well, okay. Let me show you why they need the money in Oklahoma so bad for those schools. All right. So those are the books that they have to deal with. That's they're not looking so good. Here's more books. And by the way, those desks, they've had to cannibalize other desks in order to repair some of their own desks, which are years and years old. All right. There are more books. Holes Essentials. It looks like those books may have a few holes in them. I got another picture here. We also have biology books that are outdated. These are dated to about 2004, 2005, according to some of the teachers. And this set has been updated since the Bush presidency. Oh. And you wonder why they're asking for more funding. But no. They're just teenagers that want a nice car. That's it. No, you know what we need? You know what we need to fix this? I mean, look, the strikes are great. The walkouts are fantastic, and they have been achieving things. But ultimately, what we need is the Finland model. Let me explain what that is. No private schools. They've completely banned private schools. Now, what does private schools have to do with this? Well, if you ban all private schools, guess what? Rich kids have to go to public school. You know what happens when rich kids go to public schools? Well, everybody gets a better education. Why? Because rich people will not let their kids get a substandard education. You think rich people would allow their kids to use books that look like this? No, absolutely not. And look, rich people have the means to be able to give their kids the kind of education that everybody deserves, right? And again, I believe that everybody deserves that kind of education. And unfortunately, most people don't have the means. And a lot of states have been cutting their education budget. So they get substandard schools. And private schools. Make rich kids go to school with poor kids. Because I guarantee that'll turn that shit right around. Immediately. And we got to do it. We got to do the Finland model. Not only that, not only do rich kids obviously help to bring up the funding levels of the public schools that they have to go to, teachers are incredibly well paid and respected. Schools are fully funded, and they actually get results. This isn't just like, oh, we just want to pay teachers more because teachers are greedy. No, not at all. Teachers are actually not greedy at all. All they're asking for is to not have to work second and third jobs and to have to give blood in order to afford to do their job. Now, this has real-world results on education. Finland has top scores in education, and they do it without some of the constant competition that you see in Asian countries. Instead, what they have is they have a system that's built on cooperation and respect, and for the most part, education. Right? There's so much that we can learn from other countries, and how they do things, and how they do education, how they do healthcare, how they do taxation, things like that. But instead, our lawmakers, or the lawmakers in Oklahoma, all they want to do is just compare hardworking, underpaid teachers who are, yes, thankful for their raises. And they've done reports where a lot of these teachers are like, we thank you for what you've done for us already, but it's not enough. We need more to actually do our jobs right, and to make sure, because this is the whole point of education, to make sure that the next generation is prepared to take over the United States and to continue leading us into the 21st century. That's the whole point, is to get them ready for the jobs of tomorrow, and to get them ready to create jobs and to help them solve problems and be the next leaders of tomorrow. You can't do that when you have books that are falling apart, when you have desks that are falling apart, when you have schools that have no air conditioning and 110 degree weather. I mean, that's not the kind of, we're the richest country in the world. Why do we have schools that are falling apart? Why do we have books that are falling apart? It's because there are politicians that don't want to fund them. And you have wealthy private schools that are able to have their students have the best. And all we want to do is to make sure that everybody in a public school also has the best education, so it opens up the ladders of opportunity. That's all they want. Opportunity. And yet, as I said before, Fallon, you're just a teenager that wants a new car. Well, look, to be fair, a lot of our teenagers coming out today, with the exception of some of the ones that are snorting condoms. Don't do that, please. Don't do that. And they're a very smart minority. Most of our teenagers are actually pretty smart. I mean, just look at the parking kids, for example. So, I don't know, maybe these teachers might take this as a compliment, even though it most certainly was not meant that way. Okay. Moving on. Nope, that's not the right one. There we go. One California gubernatorial hopeful has a new plan for ending homelessness in the state. Now, homelessness in California is an incredibly big issue, especially in the cities of San Francisco and Los Angeles. There are a lot of homeless people. There's a lot of problems. So this governor hopeful wants to do something about it. So what's his plan? Forced mental institutions. Wait. He wants to force people who are homeless into mental institutions. Let me give you the details. According to the Sacramento Bee, California Republican gubernatorial hopeful Travis Allen said he would use state funding to build state-run institutions where homeless people would be forced to live. Allen, who currently represents in Orange County in the state assembly, has said that tackling homelessness is too big of an issue for cities and counties to handle alone and thus needs to be addressed by the state. Well, look, maybe he makes sense on that. Homelessness is a pretty big problem, and we need to do something about it. However, mental institutions, Now, he told the Bee, it's being reported by the Bee that, quote, we need state-run mental institutions where people can actually go, where the indigent can go and get the help that they need, Allen said last month. What we're doing is not working. Yes, it's not working. No, we don't need to shove people into mental institutions. That's crazy. Now, while campaigning, Allen has blamed homelessness partly on Democratic frontrunners Gavin Newsom and Los Angeles Mayor Antonio Villagrosa. Allen has also said that California has more homeless people than the United States because it ended the housing of mentally ill patients in state-run institutions, which was phased out during the 60s and 70s. Allen said he would bring back institutionalization, and it provides adequate mental health services, substance abuse treatment, and job training. Quote, if you cannot provide a roof over your head in California and you're a California citizen, a roof will be provided for you, he told the Sacramento Bee editorial board last week. Part of Allen's plan calls for law enforcement to aggressively enforce anti-camping and loitering laws to help get homeless people off the streets. Allen claims his plan would not cost taxpayers more, but experts disagree. So, okay, there is a lot to unpack here. There is a lot wrong here. For one, look at all the assumptions that he makes. Well, obviously, I mean, most people, like homeless people, well, they're all either mental or they've got substance abuse problems, or they're too lazy to get a job, so we're going to do some job training programs. Those are a lot of assumptions. Are there mentally ill people who are homeless? Yeah, of course. That's also a problem. But are there mentally ill people who have substance abuse problems? There is, yes, sure. However, there's also a lot of people who are homeless because they can't afford sky-rising rent. They have jobs that don't keep up with inflation, with the inflation and the housing prices that are way, way too expensive. There's a lot of people that have been gentrified out of their own neighborhoods. There's been a lot of foreign investment in California when it comes to houses. Wealthy foreign investors will come up, will buy up property. They'll put very expensive condos and buildings in that area and price other people out. People who don't have those great jobs but are working, that have the minimum wage jobs. Or maybe some of these people end up bankrupt by, you name it, medical debt, things like that. Credit card debt. The solution here and the overall point is that you shouldn't have forced mental institutions. That is terrible. That is not a solution. The solution is, well, look, there's a lot of good solutions here, and I think it's a complex problem. So there's no magic bullet, there's no silver bullet, but we could start by actually giving people, I don't know, homes. For one, homeless people, let's get them into homes. Actually, it would cost far less than keeping them out in the street and then building entirely new institutions. There are places, there are homes right now that are empty. There are complexes that are empty. It may be, instead of building a mental health institution, maybe we should build some affordable housing complexes and help people actually get into homes. Look, one of the problems here, as I said before, is rent is too high. Home prices are too high, right? Even making $15 an hour, which is the minimum wage, I believe, in California, or at least in Los Angeles, it's still likely that you cannot afford a home. Housing prices are so inflated, the average home costs over $1 million. So, look, and rent can be into the thousands of dollars. They can easily eat up most of your paycheck every month. So, look, if you want to reduce homelessness, make it so that people actually have affordable homes. That would be a really, really big thing that you could do. Now, as far as people who are mentally ill, you should also probably get them into homes. And I think what would be a huge benefit is Medicare for all. Medicare for all, so they can get the type of mental health assistance they actually need, right? They can be treated. But again, you don't force people into mental institutions. Look, what happens when a single mom is down in her luck is found sleeping in her car? Do you shove her into a mental institution? Because I can assure you that there's a lot of people out there, that are down in their luck. There's single parent families, I think they're very, very likely to be homeless. You're going to shove those families into mental institutions? That's crazy. That's crazy. No, people need homes. You give them homes, and you help them get jobs, and you help them get health care. I think those are really good solutions that we can actually do that makes so much more sense than doing what this Republican hopeful Travis Allen thinks that we should do. We got to get the rent down. We got to get housing prices down because look, to borrow a phrase from a former New York candidate, the rent is too damn high. It's time we do something about it. It's Jimmy McMillan, by the way. Couldn't think of his name immediately. Okay. All right. Let's move on to Sinclair. So recently, Deadspin did a great job of journalism. They put together this video of anchors all over the country at Sinclair-owned stations reading this bizarre script about fake news and how, oh no, we got some in the national media, man, they come up with stories that fit their agenda. Well, look, that is classic projection from this ultra right-wing station. Now, since that video has come out, a lot of anchors have begun speaking out about having to read that script. Now, these are people that work at Sinclair-affiliated stations. In fact, one local anchor said, quote, "At my station, everyone wasn't comfortable doing it. The person insisted on anonymity because they believed they would be fired for speaking out." So that's one of the things that we're going to talk about as well. What Sinclair does to people who do not toe the official line, who do not toe what is politically correct. Now, look, when you hear politically correct, all you think about is, oh, the liberals are telling people what to say, the proper gender pronouns, how terrible. It's so PC. Why can't we just say what we want? Well, because most of the time, when you say something that is not PC, usually it means you're being a dick to somebody who has little power to challenge you. Just saying. Now, but the real definition of PC, not the right-wing version of PC, is saying things that the government concludes that are politically correct. Not factually correct, but politically correct that actually helps the government. So in this case, Sinclair is taking the line from the President of the United States, Donald Trump, who calls these stations fake news and says, fake news is so dangerous. It's so dangerous. There's all this fake news coming out against me. Well, these stations are now doing the politically correct things. They're saying fake news, danger to democracy. You can't get more politically correct than what they're actually doing. And this is by the real definition. And by the way, that definition of political correctness was used in both the Germans under Hitler and Stalin. So they both were like, no, don't put out actual facts. You need to put out what is politically correct. What is not actually correct, but politically correct. So now that we have that established, what Sinclair has been doing is the definition of political correctness. Anyway, now, these anchors, as I said, they're not happy about this. One of the other anchors anonymously had said, quote, "I felt like a POW recording a message." So that's how some of your local anchors feel about doing this propaganda, which it absolutely is. Now, there are some people, as I said, that are anonymous, that are speaking out. But then there are some people that are not anonymous, that are strictly speaking out. And I love this. One of them is Bob Herzog. Now, Herzog is an anchor at Sinclair's Cincinnati station, WKRC. Now, he tweeted to his viewers, quote, "This morning I am part of a 5.5 hour newscast that was constructed by hardworking producers who have been in the room right next to me hammering away all night. Our local stories come from the phone calls they've made, assignment editors, and or from reporters who got in and put their feet to the street. Our national stories come from CBS News, CNN, and yes, our parent company. We have a lot of resources and do our best to use them to deliver the news fairly. I work with good folks. That's all I've got for you." So, look, he's saying, yeah, look, CNN, I get stories from CNN. I get stories from other news agencies that that a lot of our other anchors have been forced to say, thanks to this script, are fake news. Well, no, we use those sources. So we're not doing fake news. They're not doing fake news. We're just trying to do the news. So now you have another one here who directly speaks out more forcefully and takes basically a shot at Sinclair. Quote, a producer at WGN, one of the Tribune stations Sinclair wants to require, tweeted on Monday, "There's no way any of our on-air anchors or reporters will read their scripted messages on our show. Chicago's very own, not owned." So that's awesome. Again, this is a station that could be acquired by Sinclair. So they're taking a direct shot. Now, there's more here. Former employees are also speaking out. One of them is Kirk Clyett. He's a former anchor at a Sinclair-owned station in Baltimore, Maryland. He told MSNBC on Monday that local affiliates have been required to replace regionally focused stories with these forced must-run lockstep with the Trump administration commentaries. Quote, "You have these extreme commentaries coming from this station in a very cookie-cutter way that is certainly not good for America." So, again, he's speaking out. Then you have Aaron Weiss. Now, Aaron Weiss is a former Sinclair news director who wrote in HuffPost, quote, "Over the course of my 14-year career in broadcasting, I worked for multiple corporate owners, large and small. Now, he says, I have good friends that are anchors, reporters, and executives at other station groups across the country. Only Sinclair forces those trusted local journalists to lend their credibility to shoddy reporting and commentary that if it ran in other countries, we would rightly dismiss as state propaganda. That is incredibly strong. And by the way, Weiss quit his job when he was acquired, when his station was acquired by Sinclair. So that's an important distinction. So knowing that, a lot of people might be asking, well, why haven't these anchors quit? If it's rank propaganda, well, then why not just quit Sinclair? Well, that's actually a pretty good answer to that. According to 2 copies of employment contracts reviewed by Bloomberg, some Sinclair employees were subject to a liquidated damage clause before leaving the term of their agreement was up. Now, these clauses require that they pay as much as 40% of their annual compensation to the company. That's if they quit or if they're fired. Not only that, but they're also subject to a 6-month non-compete clause and forced arbitration. So, you think it's easy to quit one of these Sinclair stations? Absolutely not. 40% of your income. Then you tell me, like, okay, you want to talk about somebody who's like a big name in maybe New York City or whatever. Like, for example, people in CNN, they make millions of dollars a year to sit there and read a script, right? Wolf Blitzer is one of the biggest, best paid script readers I've ever seen. But that local news station anchor in Poughkeepsie, he's not making multi-million dollars. She's not making, bank, right? She doesn't have this, or he have this amazing contract. No, some people start out at like $19,000 a year. Not very much. And they have to work their way up, and then maybe they'll get acquired by a bigger news station. So look, the reason that a lot of these people don't leave is because they can't. So they get acquired by Sinclair, which is looking to become a part of 72% of households. Right now, they have about 38% of households. If they get Tribune Entertainment, they're going to be at 72% of households all across the country. These anchors aren't going to have a choice. They're not going to have the ability to go and find another job. Again, you've got that non-compete clause, and they're not going to be able to afford to quit or afford to get fired by speaking out. So they're caught in a really bad position. Either stay and do what is literal politically correct propaganda, or lose their ability to take care of themselves and their families. I mean, that is a terrible position to be caught into. Now, there's more, right? So I've got one more person here who was a former reporter for a CBS affiliate, WPEC News 12 in West Palm Beach. This is James Beaton. He said that while he was at the station, he was ordered to do a man-on-the-street interviews that he felt were politically biased. Now, to give you some context, this guy's a Republican, right? He's a conservative, he's a Republican voter, and all that stuff, right? Well, he was asked to do loaded questions for Sinclair. For example, how much do you disagree with Obama this year? He said it, quote, was, quote, disguised as real journalism. And he says that even though he's a Republican, he's still incredibly pissed. Well, that's understandable, because this guy, again, was doing propaganda for the network. He was told to do propaganda and not actual journalism. Look, what Sinclair is doing is breaking every single ethics rule in journalism. I'm not even a journalist. I'm a commentator, right? I do commentary, but I still try to hold some sort of standards when it comes to, look, I'm going to give you the facts, and then I'm going to give you my opinion on those facts. But Sinclair doesn't even want to give you the facts. And they're doing, as I said before, state media propaganda to prop up the Trump administration. That is clearly not at all anything close to journalism, and not anything close to actually doing real reporting. So, I mean, what Sinclair is doing is absolutely dangerous, and we got to continue to call them out on it. And I hope that they do not get that Tribune deal. If they do, then I hope that people will turn away from that news, that station, the Sinclair-owned stations, and go online where real news actually still exists. Other than that, I don't know what else to do. Okay. So let's start out, let's end with a good story here. I know some of you might be happy about a pot story, so we'll do that. All right. So good news in the fight against opioids, the opioid epidemic. It turns out that according to new studies, marijuana, cannabis, is replacing opioids when it comes to treatment of pain. Now, two papers published Monday in JAMA Internal Medicine analyzed about more than 5 years of Medicare Part D and Medicaid prescription data. And they found that after states legalized marijuana, the number of opioid prescriptions and the daily doses of opioids actually started to decrease. So basically, if you legalize medicinal and recreational marijuana, people use opioids less. That's awesome. Now that indicates that some people may be shifting away from prescription drugs to cannabis, though the studies are unable to say whether the substitution is actually happening or if patients or doctors are the driving force. Now, I'm not entirely sure. However, I think that this is a pretty good trend. Now, according to Dr. According to economist W. David Bradford, an author on the study, he says, in this time when we are so concerned, rightly so, about opiate misuse and abuse and the mortality that's occurring, again, thousands of people are dying each day from opioid abuse, addiction, and obviously people that overdose on those pills, and related, of course, medications, fentanyl, and even people that end up going to heroin. Yeah, he says that we need to be clear-eyed and use evidence to drive our policies. And here's the thing. So far, what we've seen is the evidence comes out in favor of using cannabis in order to treat pain. Now, he says that if you're interested in giving people options for pain management that don't bring the particular risks that opiates do, states should contemplate turning on dispensary-based cannabis policies. So, again, he's saying, look, what we've seen is that so many people are dying from opioids and nobody dies from overdosing on cannabis. It's actually pretty much impossible to do. It's more than anybody could smoke in one sitting or any sitting. We should turn to that instead, because it has been shown to help relieve pain management, or actually help relieve pain and be a really good option for pain management. We should instead go to that, and we would save lives, and we would actually reduce opioids. Now, previous research has pointed to a similar correlation. A 2014 paper found that states with medical marijuana laws had nearly 25% fewer deaths from opioid overdoses. Now, the new research is the first to connect marijuana legalization to prescription painkillers with such large data sets. Now, one of the two new studies also found that people on Medicare filed 14% fewer prescriptions for opioids after medical marijuana laws were passed in their states. The second study found that Medicaid enrollees filled nearly 40 fewer opioid prescriptions per 1,000 people each year after their state passed any law making cannabis accessible. Now, here's the thing, right? Now, when you're on Medicare, Medicaid, you can't actually use that to pay for those prescriptions. So I think more people are choosing to pay out of their own pocket for legalized cannabis because they know the dangers of opioids. So, and like I've had people message me about that stuff saying, hey, look, people need pain management. Don't blame people that are on pain management that are using these prescription pills. And believe me, that's not my intention. I don't intend to blame people that get addicted. I'm saying that what's going on is that these pushers in the pharmaceutical industry are pushing these pills onto people. They're overprescribing, and people who all they want to do is just be able to function and live their life. Some of them end up getting addicted or they overdose on those pills. And cannabis can actually do something about it without those negative impacts. So, and these studies now have borne that out. In fact, opioids, in addition to addictive potential, have much greater than that of marijuana, have unappealing side effects, which may explain some of that shift from using these pain pills to actually going and using cannabis instead. Now, there's, like I said, there's a lot of different terrible side effects that people have noticed from those pills, things like OxyContin, of course. And I love what this is saying. This is Marie Hayes, a psychologist at the University of Maine. She says, quote, marijuana's safety profile isn't really at issue. People are convinced of its safety. Well, that's because, again, you can actually die from smoking marijuana or ingesting it, or however you want to actually take that drug. So now, I think, like I said, this is great news. More, legalization of medical marijuana and recreational marijuana leading to a reduction in opioids. That's the way to fight this epidemic. Not to do what Jeff Sessions is doing and declaring a full-out war on marijuana. No. We actually have to do the opposite if we actually really want to fight this prescription drug problem. We've got to make sure that people can actually access cannabis because it will help, and there are more studies that continue to come out to show this. So I think, like I said, it's great news, and I think that we should continue to go in this direction, fund more research, and while we're doing that, legalize it, decriminalize it, tax it, like a lot of these states have been doing already. And I think within the next 10 years, we're going to, as a majority country, we're going to be in that direction. So, all right. All right, that's it. That's all I got for you guys today. Again, sorry about all the technical issues. If you haven't already, please like and share the stream. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel as well. And remember, we do live shows every 3 p.m. Eastern right here to IT Nation. All right. Thanks, everybody. Love you guys. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, TYT Nation. We'll see y'all tomorrow.